All right. We have this picture of Teresa Halbach at Voyager Park. I believe that this photo was taken October 29th, 2005 by Tom Pierce at that park. The park is not even 10 minutes from the studio. Not to mention, she was not far from that park taking photos of for a family photographer, and she was also at a gas station right down the street from this park, filling up her gas tank for the last time, I do believe. Now we have Karen Halbach. She reports her car, her missing, and her car being green, and it's at 2:37 p.m. Now, why do we have the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department stating that her car is in their custody and it's dark green on the 3rd, and they have her listed as kidnapped? Now, if we look at the State of Wisconsin versus Stephen Avery report, read it. November 3rd, 2005, Karen Halbach contacted Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Halbach stated that her daughter, Teresa Marie Halbach, had not been seen or heard from since Monday, October 31st, 2005. Halbach said it was unusual for Teresa to not have had any personal or telephone contact with her family or friends for that length of time. Halbach stated that her daughter was driving a '99 Toyota RAV4, dark blue in color. Now, we have the search warrant that Mark Wiegert submitted to the judge, and this is dated November 13th, 2005. Now, it says your client is informed that on November 3rd, 2005, at 5 p.m., Karen Halbach contacted the Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Why are they saying she called at 5 p.m. when we know she called at 2:37? All the Calumet County dispatch calls are time stamped, unlike Manitowoc. And in this document, it also states that she stated that the car was dark blue. Now, this is one of the only photos we have of the VIN. Of course, we can't tell which car it comes because I believe there's more than one RAV. Anybody else would like to add on to that?
Well, right now, we see a picture of a of a blue Rav. It's just hard for me to believe that Karen Hallbach would get the color of that car wrong. She said the car was dark green. She saw that car every day. She lived right across the street from it. She'd probably been in that car. It's just so hard for me to believe that she would get that wrong. That I got to believe there's more than one at this point. And we'll see where the evidence takes.
Yep. Now, we also have this is the only evidence tag that we have that actually has the VIN on the card. Every other VIN evidence tag we see clearly states Toyota RAV4. Why? No. I pointed out this RAV hole. I noticed it about 7 months ago, but as I was going through these newly released photos, I noticed something very strange. Now, this is the car on Avery's. These are all Pam's photos that she took. And now we have all the photos that the Wisconsin State Patrol took on the Avery's property. Now, I find it strange that they claim they want to cover the car up so it doesn't get wet because they thought it was going to rain. But then we have photos of it uncovered, getting wet. So what was the point of the tarps?
It's just hard to believe that people couldn't look in on the side and see anything. The interview with Mike Hallbach, where he says that we were encouraged by that there doesn't have any, it doesn't appear to have been any fault after as the car is being removed from the Avery salvage. Why did they put a tarp on? Like you said, it wasn't. It had already been rained on. It rained many times during the week. You could look in there. They had their flashlights. It's just hard to believe they didn't see the pools of blood that Ken Kratz was talking about in his news conference. It's not believable.
I'm sure there are photos, but they haven't released them because there's over 4,000 photos that haven't released. But where's the photos of them removing the RAV from the property?
There's none.
They should document everything they're doing. They should document all the cane in custody. It's just a shit show. The more you look into it, the more lies we find. Now this is
There's a lot of gap.
This is the interior photos of the RAV4 at Calumet County Sheriff's Department after they take it out the white container. Now, like I was going back when I said the hole that's clearly not there in this photo. And if we zoom in, you can see that there's also a dent right above the fender. There's so much damage on this car, it's ridiculous. I mean, as Ben has pointed out, it's so much damage to the front of this car. And if that Pierce photo was taken on the 29th, that's 2 days. 2 days. 2 days before.
It keeps buffering.
Well, then we have the photos of it outside Calumet, the exterior. These cars do not look the same. Sometimes it looks blue, sometimes it looks green. Why is their mom reported green?
Yep, but also don't forget, sorry, Jeff, is that all the missing girl posters involving Teresa Hallbach, they all say dark green, all of them.
Yes. All the news reports, dark green.
It's just hard for me to believe that anyone who has seen that car in the same light that Pam of God has seen it, right? She comes in, we've seen all the pictures from the AV salvage. That color, to me, is best described as royal. Her mother has seen the car and that look I've seen it kind of maybe at worst look bluish, but not dark green. I've never seen that car look dark green.
Mm-hmm.
Billy, what type of damage do you think would have to be done? Going back to the picture on the picture that you had of the Manitowoc taking the RAV into custody and listing Teresa Hallbach as being kidnapped. Have they offered any explanation to that at all? I mean, at all? Is that some kind of typo that they're trying to claim? They put it into the system. People have to remember that inevitably Calumet took the RAV into custody, not man. Where's that report even coming from? What type of damage to the RAV would have to be done to lead them to believe that Teresa had been kidnapped? If it were locked on the turnaround at State Highway 140 or parked at the airport or something like that, people would think, well, maybe she took off. What had to be done to that RAV? What type of damage would there have to have been to the one that they found to generate that, to make them to believe that she had been kidnapped? It's just there's obviously something that we're not being told here.
Well, there's only a select few people that could have entered this info into the CAD system. It's either Remaker, Jacobs, Link, or Colborn. My money's on Remaker. I mean, we have Jacobs calling in the 27 for Teresa Halbach. He also spells her name wrong. But that's at 6:37 p.m. So, I don't know. The fact that Manitowoc County doesn't release anything at all. The fact that we have no dispatch calls for the 4th at all. The fact that all the Manitowoc dispatch is not time-stamped. They're hiding something for a reason.
Well, people who don't have anything to hide don't continue to hide things.
No.
Something else about them hiding is, how come we have no photos of the actual trailer being there that they supposedly loaded it into? That's a day that if somebody was going to FOIA things, that they could look for those photos as well, because we should be able to see them loading it from the flatbed to that trailer that they supposedly had. We only see one picture of that trailer, and that's or was it Madison? Sorry.
That's in
I think it's Calumet.
Calumet.
I mean, very interestingly, that's supposedly the exact set of pictures that Stephen Avery himself actually asked for.
Yep. Well, all these new photos, I can't believe how clear they are. Compared to what we've had in the past.
I think the other ones had to have been pictures of picture, because you definitely get resolution. You can zoom way in, and that's you do have excellent resolution in these new.
Yep.
To me, Millbilly, the question is, why is there an obvious subset of photographs missing from the record?
Yep. And how did Pam find this car so fast?
It almost sounds as though she had foreknowledge exactly where it was.
And right away, she questions the color.
Yes, correct. And I think both her and her daughter mentioned the fact that they'd found the RAV4, a Toyota RAV4, but it didn't match precisely what was on the missing poster. And I suppose that took them aback, that they were looking for a dark green one, not a blue one.
Yep.
In her call to pay, she actually says something like, this looks more blue than green, and I didn't want to, you know what? Finish that sentence for us, man. I didn't want to falsely alert the police that this RAV that I found might not be the right one, because I was supposed to find it somewhere. What exactly does she mean by that? Is she sure about it or she isn't? She can't even find the.
Yeah.
Why are Pam Agad's photos better than the law enforcement's? As far as clarity.
Yeah. Yeah, they're crystal clear. I'm not sure whether she used the camera or her daughter used her mobile phone. I'm not sure, but she had a mobile phone with.
Yep. So we have the damage to the car that can't be explained. We have the hole when it's on Avery's. But then these are not the same cars. One looks blue, the other one looks green. One's got a hole in the door handle, the other one doesn't. The one where the pictures of it's in the box, it almost looks like a two-door.
Yeah.
Like Manitowoc sees the wrong car.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, that's for sure.
It's interesting that the car that was reported at the turnaround on State Highway 147 was green. Nobody mistakes that for blue. Nobody says it's a bluish green. Nobody says it's more blue than green. People report it as.
Yeah, well, the color of the car doesn't change until Pam sees it. And the next person to say something other than the car being green is Bobby Dassey.
Yeah. But the other interesting point, Millbilly, is that in the trials themselves, Ken Kratz has a go at every colour. He actually mentions green, blue, greeny blue, and also teal. So he covers the full spectrum of it.
Dark green, Manitowoc Sheriff's Office. But then in their reports, they state blue.
Yes. I suppose the pressure now is to keep everything consistent, because the colour of the RAV4 found in the salvage yard is definitely blue. The car that we see in the crime lab is definitely blue.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be consistent now. If you're referring to the RAV4, the Pam of God RAV, it's blue.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose any references to a dark green one has to be a sponge or forgotten about. It has to be blue now. They've got photographs. You can't go back. It's blue. But as you said, even the mother said dark, and you see reports where it's now gone from dark green to blue.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's highly suspicious.
Isn't there like a document that where they have it marked down as a 98 Toyota RAV4? Isn't it green in there, or listed down as?
There are reference to a dark green RAV4, correct? But there's also, I think it's a DOT report in which it says Mystic Teal Blue Meat, and it actually gives the color. Yeah, mica. It actually gives the color number, and that's the color number that you normally find stamped on a vehicle, and I can't see any evidence of that in the RAV4 photos.
Nope. And another thing, Ertl states that when they disconnected the drive shaft, it was the front one, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Why do we have a photo with the rear drive shaft disconnected? It's being held up by a bungee.
Yes. Yeah, that's another mystery, Millbilly. Yeah, that's another mystery. Because remember, because they couldn't get into the RAV4 at the salvage yard, they had to somehow do something in order to move the wheels to get it on the trailer. And in the testimonies, they state that they unbolted a drive shaft and that the bolts were eventually left inside the RAV4.
I don't buy it. I think that drive shaft was never connected to begin with.
Right.
And just
Yeah.
the fact that when they call somebody to come get it with the container, the dispatcher strictly says when you get to the corner of 147 and Q, tell the officers there that you're there to talk to Mark Wiegert. Well, when he gets there, they instruct him to go down Q, and what happens to him?
He gets lost.
He gets lost. He ends up all the way by the Fox Hills Resort. He calls dispatch to get his way back. He ends up going all the way around, coming back up County Road B to 147 and coming in on Jambo Creek.
Right.
Why did they delay him?
That's a good question.
And there's no photos of them removing the car from the property.
No, there's not. That tends to suggest that they're hiding something, Millbilly, and so we don't have a proper chronology of events. To me, that's the most disturbing part, and the mere fact that no one actually did any forensic testing in situ is a real concern, because if they were in such a rush, why did they leave the RAV4 there sitting there for hours and hours? It makes no sense.
No, it doesn't.
And then there's this mad scramble to get the tarps on top of the RAV4. And once the tarps are over the RAV4, it means that no one can see what's being done underneath the tarp. And clearly there are people going in and out from under the tarp. And it's very difficult to believe that no one saw any evidence of blood in the RAV4. No one.
And we should have photos of them putting the tarp on, not them just taking it off.
Yeah. I know there's a few photos, the new ones that have been released, that shows Mark Wiegert standing on top of the red car, and he's pointing at something and he's holding the tarp, I think. But in terms of them putting on the, you're right, there really isn't very much at all.
It's like anything that would have benefited Stephen Avery, they completely ignored.
Yes, but to me the question is, are there photographs that show all of that, but the state has withheld them, either lost them or deliberately put them somewhere? And don't forget, you've got Colburn with his digital camera going everywhere taking pictures. Boy, I tell you what, the photos on his digital camera must be very, very important. But we haven't seen them. We don't know what they are. And the other thing is, you notice that both Pam and her daughter only take 6 photographs. They didn't take any other photographs of, events happening around the RAV. Nothing.
Why are there
Just
no
everything
photos
seemed
of
to
the
stop.
interior of the car on the property before they remove it?
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's
Well-
obviously what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it is difficult to believe that there was no in situ processing of the RAV, and I can't believe that no one took interior picture of the RAV4. It makes sense, and if they did, they probably showed the dash with no blood on it. So, there's the game right there. If you have internal pictures showing the back and also the front console with no blood, then it's a setup, right?
Yep.
And if you want to show the world, hey, look, there's blood in it, you take photos, you show everyone, but the fact that there's nothing, to me, is very suspicious.
I agree.
So just look, we have time gaps. We've got missing gaps in the story and in the narrative.
And it all starts
Right?
on the 3rd.
Yeah, yes, it does.
There's a
And
reason.
it goes,
There's a reason why they bump it up to 5 p.m.
yeah, there's got to be. There's got to be. It buys them a couple of hours for a start.
And if you listen to Brendan's interrogation, the way he says the car got there, is not the way they tell Stephen.
No, that's a very important point there, Millbilly, because remember on November the 9th, when Stephen Avery was being interrogated by both Fassbender and Wiegert, they had the tenacity to tell Stephen that they knew exactly how the RAV4 got on salvage yard. Do you remember that?
Yep, he says, we know the car came through the field by the dead end,
Yes.
through the deer camp, and came in through the back entrance. But when they talk to Brendan Dassey, what does he say?
Well, that's it. But before I go into that, Millbilly, the important point is when Fassbender said that to Stephen, they knew nothing, of course, about Brendan and what he was going to eventually get himself into. Essentially, when Brendan was interrogated, Brendan said that after they burnt Teresa Halbach, both him and Stephen drove the RAV4 from the garage past his sister's property, Stephen's sister's property, past Dolores's house, past Chucky's house, past the crusher, and then they drove it to the pit. So this is in complete contrast to what Fassbender told Steve, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that one of those stories has to be right.
And Stephen even says, why would I hide the car there? I would just crush it and be done with it.
Correct.
And
Correct.
redundant.
Yes. It seems rather bizarre that if you're going to commit this type of murder, that you're going to drive straight past the crusher and decide to leave the RAV4 in open view. And don't forget that his brother and I think somebody else was down there sighting guns.
That was
Friday.
The thing about that, Earl states that in his interview, he was like, I can't really, I'm getting days mixed up, but he claims that the last time he was in the pit was on Wednesday when he was hunting wabbits with Robert Fabian. But
yes,
he's lying because that was not Wednesday, that was Monday the 31st.
Right. Earl's interview was on the 9th.
Yes.
The same as Steve.
So this is 4 days after Steve and Earl are in the pit by the crusher, sighting in his rifle. Why doesn't he remember that?
Yes.
And he states that he's hunting brush piles that Stephen burned 2 days prior.
Yeah. Clearly nothing really makes sense with what they've been talking about. But we mustn't also forget, Millbilly, that a flyover was done on the 4th. And an extensive flyover, and nobody reported seeing a RAV4 anywhere, including the Avery salvage yard. Then lo and behold, on the Saturday, the 5th, Pam McGod finds the RAV in record time.
It's remarkable that there's not even. I mean, you can argue with the shakiness of the flyover video on the four
Yeah.
that it might be hard to identify a car as a RAV4, even though if you have a frame by frame analysis capability, you can get some decent stills in some certain spot. But there's not
Yes.
even a photo. There's not even a spot in the video on the fourth that you can freeze in on and even see sort of a bluish blur where the RAV ought to be, or maybe a dark greenish blur, as some would want this. Where the RAV ought to, they didn't even get any type of shot from there at all.
Yeah.
And I think we have one to show later where even one of the ones that the state police did from far away, you can zoom in, see through the trees, and see exactly where the RAV ought to be.
Yes. But
So it's not believable that they didn't even have a shot where you could see a blurry blue speck
Correct.
where the RAV ought to be.
Yeah, correct. And Sheriff Pagel was in the plane, and I think it was Hawkins as well.
Baldwin.
Baldwin. And the pilot. And when they spoke with the pilot during the trials, the pilot basically said they knew what they were looking for. He couldn't see anything. Now, he's an experienced pilot, so he would have done searches before in the past. So he would have known what to look for. He mentions that nothing was found. And if Pagel and Baldwin had seen something, none of them spoke to the pilot. They kept it quiet. Now, I understand, yes, planes are very noisy, but you can't, if it's very difficult, Millbilly, when you've got over 3 hours of footage and they distill it down to how many minutes?
About 3 for the fourth.
Yeah.
Right.
Between 3 and 4.
Yes, because in the trial, they talk about the fact that they're up in the air for hours. They looked everywhere. They went past Teresa's property. I think they went to Green Bay as well. They searched everywhere. Roads, ditches, barns, all locations, and no one saw anything. Now remember, the RAV4 is blue, but it's also got a big wheel at the back that says Toyota RAV4. So wouldn't that potentially drag your attention towards that vehicle?
They put the Rambler hood over the rear quarter, and they left the RAV4 wheel exposed for the world to see. Doesn't make any sense.
It makes you think. It makes you think that the fourth flyover wasn't meant for searching for a RAV4. Maybe it was to give it the appearance that they were searching for a RAV4, but they weren't looking for no RAV4. I'll tell you that. They're probably looking for an area to where they can either get onto the Avery property and plant a RAV4, or they were scouting for area.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. When you've got an aerial view from above, you can see all the little access roads that leads to the salvage yard. And you know that during the November the 9th interrogation, Stephen actually listed all the different places that you can come from to plant the RAV, to bring the RAV on. And of course, Fassbender actually even told him where they believe the RAV4 came from, right? Now, how do you go from the RAV4 being in the garage to the RAV4 coming from the deer camp? How do you work that one out, guys?
Wrong garage.
You just can't.
Wrong garage. Yeah, correct.
It just makes me wonder when Steven says he sees lights or tail lights.
Yes. There were 2 occasions where someone saw the tail light and the other one saw, I think it was headlights. And they go back and reinvestigate and they didn't find anything. And of course, we now know that if you look from above, the field that's running adjacent to Stephen's trailer is a real incognito way to go from Cuss Road directly to Stephen's trailer. Right, it's a straight road, and you can go back and forward, and no one even know you're there.
Well, to touch base on both incidences where headlights and taillights were seen. November 3rd, that is when taillights were seen down by Avery's property, and they go down. They don't see anything. This is the day when they went to Menards.
Yeah.
On the 4th, they were seen again, and it's kind of hard to explain without photos. We're kind of like on a delay, but what happened was Queso has it down in the report that they were at Avery's property the morning of November 4th at 10:30. At that time, they claimed that they went in there and they searched his property and they interviewed him. But this actually didn't take place until around, I want to say between 7 and 8:30, sometime around there, because it was right. Avery was broadcasted and interviewed by the news, NBC 26.
Yes.
In that interview that he gives, he tells the Diana from NBC that this search and interview done by law enforcement was actually that night before they got there. So they were on Avery's property after 8 o'clock. Avery says that Chuck had called him after law enforcement had left, and that he basically saw headlights over down by his place. And I believe at that time, that was another group of law enforcement agents planting the RAV4 while Avery and his family were inside his trailer being interviewed and his property being searched. With conducting that interview and conducting that search, basically created a diversion to keep the family and Avery's attention off the yard. So another group of agents could get onto the property without being seen and plant the RAV4. But they didn't expect anybody to basically catch them doing it, which that's Chuck. Chuck was actually watching.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So you reckon that they had a prior attempt to plant it?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Yeah. That seems to make sense. Because the RAV4, there were lights that were seen near Chucky's place, and the other night they saw lights near Stephen's trailer, which is very, very interesting.
There is another incident though, but what happened was on November 9th, Chuck was interviewed by a Detective O'Neill and a DO agent, Skorlinski,
Yeah.
They actually talked to Chuck about seeing these headlights, and while Chuck's trying to explain to them what day was which, what day they actually saw the headlights on Friday night, you hear Storlinski actually finish Chuck's sentence, and he basically tries to confuse him, and he tries to ask him, now's the time for you to change your story if you want to change it. and Sterlinski actually screws up, and he does this thing called a Freudian line slip or something like that.
Freudian.
Freudian, yeah, Freudian slip.
Freudian.
And
Yeah.
while he's talking to him, he says, "Well, Friday night is when you seen those headlights down by me," and then it switches up, and he says, "Over by your," and to me, I believe that he actually caught himself, but not until he actually revealed that in the direction Chuck saw those lights, the guy actually says over by me, which he basically implicates himself in the direction of where these lights were being seen.
Yes. Yeah. Oh boy.
But it's kind of crazy, like how everywhere you see planted evidence or mysterious circumstances, it seems like the DOJ is always present.
And there's no documents of discovery whatsoever, except for the key and the plates.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you notice, both the number plates and the RAV4 were found on the periphery of the property. So anyone casually looking would find the number plates and also the RAV4. They weren't embedded deep within the compound, they're on the outside.
Well, I'm going to play Stephen Avery's interview that he gives to Wiegert and Fassbender and listen to what he says.
What you mean? I can set it up so it's put it right in my forehead. Everything I do is record it.
Why?
Why? Because then I won't be a suspect in anything.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Oh, I got you.
Kind of like, what was that movie? With, what was that movie with, the goofy guy, the funny guy, and they were watching everything, his whole life was
Jim
on.
Carrey?
Yeah, Jim Carrey.
Okay.
Something like that, I guess.
So you want to talk a little bit yet?
So,
Okay. How long were you put away for, did you say?
18 years and 6 weeks.
Is that rough on you?
Of course.
I understand that.
Then you get nailed again. The same damn thing.
For what? For this thing? 18 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Long, dark time. Especially kind of screws a guy up a little bit too after a while. Yeah, I can understand that. Steve, there was also investigation to indicate, okay, that you had a role in Teresa's disappearance, okay? The truck was found on your property. The license, we found the license plates yesterday that you had put in the car, okay?
I put nothing in the car.
And we also found some of her bones today in that burning area that you put in, okay?
That was gone.
You need to think about doing the right thing for your family.
It wasn't there.
You need to do the right thing for your family, okay?
I didn't do it.
You need to do the right thing for your family here. Hey, maybe it was an accident. I don't think you meant for this to
I
happen.
didn't do it.
Steve, I don't think you meant for this to happen. Did you meant for this to happen?
I didn't do it.
It was probably a mistake.
I did not do it.
It was most likely a mistake. Isn't that right? You didn't mean for this to happen, did you?
I didn't do it.
Then who did it? How did her body get on your property? How did the license plates get in the cars behind your house? How did the truck get on your property? How does that happen, Steve?
I don't know.
Steve, how'd the blood get in your house?
What blood?
Her blood
How is her blood in my house?
in your garage.
In your house?
It can be.
And how does her key, the ignition key, get in your house, in your bedroom? Steve,
It can be.
think about it, Steve.
No,
Steve, think about this.
it can be.
Steve. Steve, it is.
No,
The facts of the matter are, it's just a matter of, did you do this intentionally or was it an accident?
I didn't do
If it was an
nothing.
accident, people understand accident. Maybe you threw her out in the junkyard, she fell and hit her head, and you were scared. Was that the case? If that's the
No.
case, you should tell us that. Because I don't think you're, this cold-blooded killer, unless I'm wrong. Was it a mistake? Or mean to do that. I think it was a mistake. I think something went wrong. That's what I
I did
think.
not do it.
How does the body end up on your property, the key ends up in your house, the blood ends up in your house? How does that all happen, Steve?
I set up.
A setup from whom? You were home all week, you told me you were home all week. You're home all week. Uh-huh.
Steve, we got your prints. We got you in that car.
How'd your palm prints get on the car?
How's my conference in the car?
We got your person on that car.
Right by the door.
You know how this works. You can't beat the evidence.
Work with us a little.
If you
Think
did
of your
it-
family.
Think of your family.
I did not do it.
How's your family gonna be when they think you're a cold-blooded person?
I did
If
not
you
do it.
made a mistake, they'll understand that. I understand that.
People's got my fingerprints.
People make mistakes.
Who's
You
got your
can't.
fingerprints?
Everybody does.
Who?
The crime lab, the police station.
What police station?
None of what.
Manitowoc had nothing to do, that's why him and I are here, okay?
Yeah, but if there's a crooked cop,
They're gonna plant her blood in your house and put the key in there when you're home all week? How's that gonna happen? You're home
but
all
I
week.
ain't home all week.
You just told me you're basically home all week except
Well,
for
I work up
Thursday.
at a garage.
So you're telling me somebody planted that and the body?
I didn't do it.
Who did it?
I don't know.
Steve.
I don't know.
Steve. Think of your family here for a
I am
second.
thinking of my
No,
family.
you're not. You're thinking of yourself.
No.
You're thinking of yourself.
And we don't blame you for doing that. God damn it, you had 17 years in prison for something you didn't freaking do.
I didn't do this one.
And we understand that.
Why would I give you everything if I did it? I wouldn't be talking to you.
Who did it?
Maybe it's because you want to talk to us. Okay?
I don't wanna talk to
If
you.
you
I don't
didn't-
want nothing to do with no cops.
I don't think
But
you
I
are
know
a
there's
blooded
people-
killer.
There's people out there that's got my shit. And the cops are the perfect ones that got it
So
all.
there's somebody that takes.
The
you-
sheriff has
There's
got
somebody
everything
that
on it.
takes your bloody palm print and puts it on somewhere? How does that happen?
A bloody palm for it.
How does that happen? How does that happen? Steve, explain that to me.
All right, nothing.
Something, you made a mistake.
No, I
Steve,
did not.
You made a mistake.
I didn't do that. How can I
So you
make mistakes?
So you intentionally killed her, is that what you're telling me?
No, I didn't. I didn't do
Then how
nothing.
did it happen? Explain to me how it happened.
I didn't do
I think you
nothing.
made a mistake.
I didn't do
I
nothing.
think something went too far.
No.
Then I'm wrong.
How can I do it? When my mom came down, my brother came down, and I'm over by my sisters.
Well,
There ain't no way.
There's
They'd see-
inconsistencies
they'd
in
see
all of
something.
this.
Steve, there's inconsistencies in your story. Everything you've been telling the media.
Well, how about the
You tell
other?
one story one day, you tell another story another day. You're not consistent
Yeah,
there.
but how about the other ones?
What other one?
She seen somebody be after me.
Who's seen somebody after you?
She did.
Who did she see after you?
I don't know.
She didn't see anybody after you. She wasn't seen after she was at your house. How could she?
How do I know?
How could she?
I
She
did
didn't
not.
leave your house. She didn't leave your house alive.
I didn't
Steve, you
didn't
did.
do nothing to
You
her.
did.
No.
we know she was in your house. You said she was never in your house. How does her
She was never in my
DNA
house.
get into your house?
How is she gonna be in my house?
Your own family basically has indicated that.
What, in my house?
How does her key for her truck that's on your property get by your bed? Don't you think that's something a little difficult to happen if you didn't do it? Yes, it is. It doesn't
Well,
happen.
There was one day that I smelled smoke in my back bedroom.
Yeah,
Where would that come from?
I don't know.
And I don't smoke.
What,
And Jody's
smoke?
been,
So you think
in the-
somebody's sneaking in your house and smoking?
if you were planting something, they'd be smoking. I don't smoke.
Mhm. So you think somebody snuck in your house and planted the evidence and they were smoking during it?
What else?
I don't know. Steve,
But it was
Look,
only in the
Steve,
back.
you know how this stuff works. You're a smart
I
guy.
know how it works,
Okay, you're a smart guy.
but I did not do it.
You did do it.
I did not.
The fact of the matter is you did. The body was found in your property, the key for her truck was found in your house. You took the license plates off the truck and you tried to hide the truck.
We even know how you drove the truck.
We didn't even figure out how you drove the truck.
And where you
If I
came.
would have did it, I'd have crushed the son of a bitch.
You didn't get time. You planned on crushing it, but you didn't get time.
No. I did not do it.
You
You
can't
drove
crush it
across
in
the
a day.
field, you went by the dead end, you went down the dirt road by the hunting shacks, you went in that back entrance and you parked that car there. You walked up Bloodhound followed your scent all that way, walked you right up through there, where the plates were thrown even.
Took us to the body, took us to the place,
I never walked that.
took us to your house.
I was never, I
I
was
know
never
you're
walked-
scared, Steve. I know
I'm
you're
not
scared.
scared.
Because you didn't mean to kill her. I don't think you meant to kill
No,
her.
I did not do it.
This wasn't a planned thing.
No,
Did you plan it?
no.
Okay, I didn't think so. I didn't think you're that kind of a guy from meeting.
I
I
didn't
think
kill
what
her.
happened, you come out of prison for serving time for something you didn't even do.
I did not.
And it
do
screws you up in the head, like it screws everybody up. They didn't give you any counseling. You said that before, they gave you no counseling.
I did not.
The
do it.
body is on your property. The key is in your bedroom. You know the key is there because you put the key there. That's the only way the key gets there.
No.
Yes, Steve, yes, that's the fact. You can deny it all you want. The evidence will show that, okay? That's the way it is.
evidence, the cops got the evidence.
Yeah.
Got
Two
all my
independent
evidence.
investigators that have never met you, two people who have never met you, have nothing against you. I know nothing about you.
No, you see, if somebody else plants that shit there, you ain't gonna see it.
Then why
anyway.
why is your DNA there? Why is her blood in your house? How are they gonna get their blood in your house?
How is her blood in my house? It
I
can't
don't
be.
know.
I
How does
used
your
to-
DNA get
I
inside
used
the
to leave
truck?
my house open all the time.
How does your DNA get inside of her truck?